Good evening. My name is Pavel Usanov, and I will tell you about post-Soviet Russian economy. It's a great pleasure for me to present my investigation about post-Soviet Russian economy in Golden Hall, European University, and I hope you enjoy this presentation. I need to give you a few words about my scientific interest and about myself. I am assistant professor at the Russian Academy of National Economy. I teach economics in the Department of Comparative Political Studies, and also I am director of Hayek Institute in St. Petersburg. I have interest in economics, and I will tell you about the current problem of our economy, which I know, which I studied. And of course, we need to analyze the ground of these problems. We need to describe different problems between reforms. I mean, Soviet economy in the late period of the Soviet history. After it, I will give you information about reforms and about ideas of our leaders. And I think you will see that the current economic problems is connected with our background, about our history. And what I need to tell you in the beginning, Montesquieu said that the happy is the nation if its history is boring. But the history of Russia is not boring. I think you know it. And because of it, it's a very important lesson for the world. I hope you will listen and don't do it in your countries. I hope we will. I hope we change our mind in the future, and we will not do this this way. Okay. It's not boring, it's very interesting, sometimes surprising, and I will tell you about 5 parts of my today presentation. Of course, it's just a short overview of the history of 25 years of modern Russian economy. If you want to understand Russian economy, of course, you need more information, more time. I don't have this time today, but I hope you will read books or lecture about post-Soviet period, because it's a very interesting period in the history, not only in Russian but in the world, because many countries had transitioned from the centrally planned economy to the free market economy, but we have differences between Russian experience and, for example, Poland experience. Main feature of Russian reforms is the very biggest country and the very biggest problem in the economy for the 70 years. 70 years, it's so much time for these problems. Okay, first step, we need to analyze main question of reforms. Which way is better? Gradual, slowly way to create free market economy, or shock therapy? Many people think that the Russian is shock therapy example, but I will show you that it's not the case, because many problems of modern Russian economy is a result of inconsistent of reforms. And also I think that this picture is a good illustration for my presentation, because Russian economy, it's look like a train, but we don't have rails, we don't have strategy of our reform. 20 years earlier, we thought that the free market economy is good for Russian, but today we don't understand what is our way, which way is better for Russia. Maybe third way. Russian people like to dream about special way in the history, not capitalism, not socialism, but Russian way. I don't know what is this, but I would like to describe problems of that way in our country. I will give you information, I think brief photos about last Soviet economy. It's a good illustration what is the socialism in our economy. I think it's very important for the future. Many people in Russia and in the world forget what is this. Quiz, black markets, shortages, and another problems of Soviet economy. I will show you photos. Third is the reforms of Gaidar's comment and follower. Fourth part of my presentation will be about current problems, and I would like to formulate in the end of my presentation lessons for the world. In this graph you can see two ways to get free market economy. This more theoretical problem than practical, but you need to differ these ways. First way, this shock therapy. It means that you will have big crisis, but very soon economy grow up. We will see recovery of economy, and main good feature of shock therapy is that you not lose the time. You have enough time to economic grow after reforms. And the Poland is a good example of shock therapy. GDP has doubled from the reforms. It's not the case about Russia. We had many problems. Another way is slowly way, gradual way. You are very afraid social problems. You want to use every intervention to support our economy. I think maybe China is a good example of gradual way. But this is more theoretical problem than practical, because the Russian way was different. Real way of Russia was the next. Of course, in the beginning of reform, our leadership said that we need free market economy, and the best way is quickly. Do it quickly. But in the beginning of reforms, many politicians change his mind and change the way. Real way of Russia, this is the bad synthesis of gradual way and shock therapy. It's look like the beginning of something, but after first step, you are very afraid and to freeze your reforms. And as a result, we can see that we don't have a good economic growth in the 19th, and also we spent our time to recovery, and this is very expensive for Russian people, very expensive for Russian economy. We spent many time to recovery. It's not so good for us. I need back step for analyze socialism and the reason of the collapse of centrally planned economy. And I need to give you a short view about theoretical and practical problem in reformation. Not reformation, theoretical and practical problem in Soviet economy. Main feature of the socialist centrally planned economy is not free market prices, and we don't have free market prices, money prices, and we don't have private property. If you don't have private property and you don't have free prices, you don't have need information to allocate your resources. In the Soviet economy, in the centrally planned economy, government didn't know about which way is better for the future, for the produce new goods. If you don't have a market of capital goods, in the Soviet economy, all capital goods is government goods. You can't calculate best way to produce consumer goods. In the free market economy, we can see market of capital goods and market of consumer goods. And you can calculate which way is better and which of those is costless or better for the economy, for industry. You don't have information in the centrally planned economy, and I would like to give you citing from the book of F.A. Hayek about use of knowledge in society. The peculiar character of the problem of a rational economic order is determined precisely by the fact that the knowledge of the circumstances of which we must make use never exist in concentrated or integrated form, but solely as the dispersed bits of incomplete and frequently contradictory knowledge, which are all the separate individual processes. It means that you don't have information about how to produce goods for the best way if you don't have a market prices. And this is a theoretical problem, but it's not only one. Of course, one of the problems in the late Soviet economy is a low level of price in the oil. Oil was a main export, and if we have low level of prices on the oil, we don't have a budget for realize our social programs. I will give you a few photos and few, I think, illustration about the Soviet economy in the end of its history. This is quiz, so many quiz for the food, for the bread shortage, black markets. In the 18th, it was a depression in the economy, crude grayness and miserable life. I don't like to give you only words. I will show you photos if you want to understand is it work or is it not. I think this man is very hungry, and this man doesn't know what is this rule, maybe institutional limits, rules about private property. Of course, every man in this quiz want to eat, but this is the good strategy for forget your food, because if you don't act active in this sphere, you can't eat. And if you look at this picture, I think you agree that the socialism in the late period of Soviet economy is not a good social order. Many people think that the socialism is an order, is a very suitable system, but the fact it's not the case. This is a quiz to the bread. Good brand for the shop 61. If you want to buy bread, you need to spend many times. I remember my youth in 18th. We spent, I think, 3 hours to buy the milk, but we can't do it in this case. Okay, you have a good choice in this shop. At the left, you can see no socks. At the right, no shoes. I think it's a good illustration for the free to choose. You can choose what you want. Don't have socks, don't have shoes. It's a problem of our economy. I think, common opinion, I think, in the late period of Soviet economy was absolutely concrete. Socialist economy, centrally planned economy is not effective, and we need to do reforms, market reforms, because if we don't do it, we don't have a food. It's a lesson for the people in this period. Also, you can see this man. I think he was very surprisingly because he can't buy anything in this shop, and this is also illustration of the problems of Soviet economy. But the background of ideas of reformers was similar. Economist from Soviet economy was Marxist, and the system of this economy was based on the capital theory of Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and our Russian product, Vladimir Lenin. But if you think that the Gaidars and his follower was not Marxist, you're wrong, because in the beginning of reform, Gaidar said that we need something special, we need to improve socialism. I think we didn't have economists who believe in free market in the 19th. And this is the case not only for Gaidar, but for another man. Western experts knew only a few about Soviet economy. Reason of this is that they don't have information in statistics. For example, Pavel Samuelson said in the end of 18th that the Soviet economy is very effective, and in the beginning of new century, Soviet economy will be more powerful than United States economy. Many economists from the Western countries thought that Soviet experience, it's a very success experience. This is a society in this is a free society, and the people in this society were happy. But in the fact, statistic was confused. It's a problem for the Western experts, because they do recommendation about reforms, but they didn't understand what is this centrally planned economy and how it works market economy. I will give you information about Gaidar's view on the reforms. This is an article from Moscow News in 1989, October 8. This is the Gaidar's, I think, main ideas about reformation. I will citate you this phrase. History has left us a chance to repeat the English model of social development. It is impossible to transfer the means of production into the hands of the new Varisha of the shadow economy, chiefs and international corporation. Maybe you will think that is the word of anti-globalist, but this is a liberal economist. He thought that we need to improve socialism. it was a very popular idea that the centrally planned economy is good, but we need to add something like market. We don't need to destroy the system. We need to improve this system. Maybe new calculation, maybe new institutions, but you don't need to change principle. Direct prices and didn't have a private property, the capital goods. I think it's a problem because if you want to improve socialism, you will get socialism, but in new form. I think in 2015 we have a problem, this type of problem. Gaidar want to create market socialism. I think current system of Russian economy is a mixed and the part of our economy is socialism. It's not effective. I will describe you the way of our reforms. You can see in this picture 3 stages. On the x-axis you can see political freedom. Y-axis it's economic freedom. Capitalism is a high level of economic freedom and political freedom. But in the USSR we had low level of economic freedom and low level of political freedom. In the period of the collapse of USSR, it was spontaneous shift to the more economic freedom and more political freedom. I think it was the end of 18th. But point 2 is the reform, Gaidar's reform. But I will give you information about these reforms, and I think you will agree that it's not a consistent reform. So many intervention in the economy in this period. And this is the reform, this is the step back to the more centrally planned economy. Without economic freedom for beginning, but as a result of this, we will see decrease of political freedom. Okay, many people think that the Gaidar was a liberal and the reforms, Gaidar's reform was radical free market. I will give you information about real action in the beginning of the 90s. In 1992, in April and June, Gaidar had decision about restricting of the freedom of the street trade. I think it's not free market policy. It's look like half policy of socialism or interventionism. In the June of 1882, we can see export duties, and at the summer, the beginning of growth of the money supply, it was a huge growth rate, about 7-13 per month, not in the year, per month. Every month, our money supply grew up for the 10%, and as a result, we had a huge inflation. December 28th, a ban of the export of more than 2x per person. It's very important to Russian economy to ban X to export. If we don't have an X in the Russian, we can't improve our economy, and especially a ban of export of beds and samovars. If you know samovars, it's our main product, And of course, if we don't have samovars in the Russian economy, we don't have a chance to improve our system to get economic growth. And the last fact is that the liberalization was not complete. Only 40–60% of prices was liberalized. But the regulation of prices was at the bread, milk, alcohol, salt, sugar, baby food, oil, and gasoline. Of course, if you have free market on the goods, you don't have shortages. You don't have black markets. But if you have regulation of prices, you will have a problem. It's look like a Soviet system, but part of Soviet system. Of course, the prices creates new problems. One example of the policy of Gaidar's comment in the 1991, this is nationalization of railway sleepers. Some of ours, it's our good product, but it's not enough. If you want to create new economy, if you want to have the biggest economy in the world, you need to have railway sleepers in the hand of government. I think it's not effective decision, but it was political decision. I think it's a problem, and we need to know about these real actions, not only about overview of this period. I told you about the common position about this problem, that the Soviet economy was not so bad. After it, we will have reforms, and this is liberal reforms. And it was disease. It was very problems of our economy, but it's not the case, because many real action was interventionist, not free market. What is the consequences of this policy? Budget deficit in this period was 23% of GDP. This more than Greece today. Inflation in 1992, 2,600%. I think it's impossible to imagine. You can see this rate of inflation in your countries. Inflation in the last 7 years after reform was 500,000%. The fall in GDP in the last 7 years was 40%. It was reforms, and this is not success, I think. Okay, I will show you photos about next period, about 90s. This is the Parliament of Russia. If you think that liberal policy is a policy of rule of law, I think that it's not rule of law. It's look like war. If you want to have market economy, you need to have rule of law. But in this picture, you can see real everyday practice in the Russian 90s. Maybe you know who this man? No? This is, I think, most famous actor in the beginning of reforms. This is the advertising of Triple M. It was a financial pyramid in Russia, and this person said in this picture to his brother, I am not speculator, I am a partner. I will invest my money to economy. But I think cucumbers and vodka, it's a good illustration for real doing of this man. It's not a real investment. It was joint stock company, but it's not effective. It's not real investment in the economy. Next period of our economy and next period of Russian history is period of Vladimir Putin. Maybe you think that is a different period, but I think it's more similar. At the left side of this picture you can see our president. At the right it's a businessman. I think you know this Mikhail Khodorkovsky. One. Not in Russia. Second, Mikhail Friedman. In Russia today, he is president of Alfa Bank. Third, Mr. Pugachev. He is not in Russia today. And fourth, Mr. Potanin in Russia today. I think you can understand it is not so simple to be a businessman in Russia. You have 30% to be at the prison. Okay, I don't have enough time, and I think we will need to ask questions. I will show you maybe information about current economic problems. This is a good picture of free period of our economy, Yeltsin period, Putin and Medvedev, and after it. And you can see in this picture that it was very successive period. The Putin was a president in this period. What are the sources of this success? The enigma is the oil prices. If you compare oil prices in 19th and in the Putin period, you feel the difference, because in the 19th it was $20, but in the Putin times it was $100. If you're an investor and if you find a good place for investing, Russia was a good place before the crisis of 2008. For example, this is a rational trade system. This is the index of stock exchange of Russian economy, and the lowest level of this index was 38 in the 98. But before the crisis, this index was 2,500 points. It's a very effective investment. I think it was a source of our economic growth and our stock exchange. Okay, I tried to show you just a few problems of our reforms. I tried to formulate that the reforms is not consist. The third way, it's not so good idea for Russian economy. But in the end of my presentation, I would like to show you, I think, main problem. It's size of the government and the cost of the government in the Russia. You know that we have not so much taxation, official taxation, income tax. It's not so much like in Europe, 13%, it's not so much, but if you compare all types of taxation, I mean taxation in the broad sense, this is the different government intervention and the cost of this intervention. What is the real taxation in the economy? Official taxation, it's mean duties, it's mean direct and indirect taxes, is 46% of GDP. It's only official, but you know that Russian economy, it's not only legal economy, we have another different way of taxation, not official, and this is corruption tax, regulative tax, and inflation tax. This is very conservative marks of higher school of economics. 5% of GDP is a corruption tax. I think you understand what it means. Regulative taxes, it's the cost of many bureaucrats in the Russian economy. And inflation tax is very high, 16% of GDP. It's a part of the all taxation in the broad sense. The total level of taxation is 72% of GDP. The GDP per capita in Russia in dollars is $24,000. If you calculate, you will get this cost of the government. Every citizen of the Russia give the state 80,000 rubles per month, or $1,440 every month. It's very big, I think, cost of the government. And if we want to improve our system, we need to understand how this money is spent. Is it effective or not? Okay, I will give you, I think, 3 lessons on this picture, and before it I will give you, I think, very important very important idea of British economist Richard Cobden. If you get the freedom of exchange without understanding its meaning, it will be easy to lose the game. I think if you compare our economy, our political system with another countries, you will agree that we have a problem in the size of government, in the rule of law, and the understanding of the market economy. I will give you, I think, only 3 lessons after my presentation about post-Soviet economy. If you want to get good results in your future reforms, you need to have a correct understanding of freedom. I think this idea of Richard Cobden is very important, but also great Georgian reformers, Kaha Bendukidze, do you know this man, said that if you want to be reformers, you need to have right understanding of freedom. It's not contradictory understanding like in Gaidar's mind, but something more consistently. Third lesson is that reform is not consistently, and if you need get step by step reform. And third, ideas that interventionism, it's a real policy of Russian economy today, is not working as socialism, and we need something another. Okay, thank you for your attention. You can. if you have questions, I hope I will.
Thank you very much, Pavel, for the presentation. One thing I like about it is that it's probably quite provocative, and I think this was part of the points for the lecture you had. Is
unusual view.
Yeah, to say the least. So,
maybe this is a useful, unusual view.
No, unusual and provocative views are always useful.
Okay, thanks.
But it's interesting, and I hope nobody else minds. I'd like to ask Dr. Nikita Lomagin, who's the academic director of the MARS program, to reflect and give some feedback and comments on this. And then, of course, the floor is open for the discussions and questions, actually.
Discussion and questions, okay.
Okay, actually, it's, for me it was quite provoking talk since I lived that period of time, and I remember vividly what kind of life they had and how people crowded, queued for food, etc. But you know, actually, it's I would my first comment will be about socialism as a system and the role of ideology and collapse of USSR. So I would say that common economy is bad, and anyone proved it definitely that it doesn't work, right? So if we keep in mind, you know, at least 4 factors which led to collapse of USSR. First one, extremely high military expenditures. $104 billion Russia, USSR spent the last year before the Soviet Union has fallen apart. So the United States spent at that time just twice as much. Then, extremely high level of subsidies for satellites within COCO and Warsaw Pact. It would add another $70 billion, right? When you show the slide with no boots, no shoes, no food, you should understand perfectly what and who should deliver their shoes, boots to Russia. It was Romania, it was Poland, it was Hungary, there were other countries. You know, the Soviet Union believed in ideal division of labor, right? So people believe that we can calculate rationally who will supply what, right? It's number 2. Number 3, when we look back at 70s, when OPEC states made 280 billion as a result of 2 oil shocks, USSR made 70 billion. The question is how we spent those money, right? And what OPEC states did with those money. OPEC managed to diversify the economy. They built artificial islands, right? We know, United Emirates, there are new financial centers, etc., etc. What the Soviet Union did was those 70 billion. We supported communist movement across the globe, in Africa, Latin America, Caribbean, and we wasted those money, frankly speaking, right? So resources were available, but the key denominator for all this were politics and ambitions. Pipes, in his Nobel speech, that political science society cannot get Nobel Prize for the writings, but they are allowed to speak in Oslo or to deliver something. He said that if USSR were an island, the communism as a system, as a political system, economic system, could live for ages. Right? And in addition to that, the number 4 factor, which should be kept in mind when we speak about the collapse of the Soviet Union, the USSR waged Cold War on 2 fronts. Right? The one front was with NATO, led by the United States, and the second one was China. And we spent extremely, huge amount of resources to be on pair both in Europe and in China. So if you put aside those issues, those resources which we just wasted from the whole calculus you made, you will see that it's not easy to accept the arguments you provided. So this is one thing, but you should remember that CIA made, not only CIA, but many people. You referred to Samuel Elson and there were many other economists. That Sputnik was launched in USSR. So somehow those guys with better economic thinking were capable to concentrate resources to launch missiles, to reach strategic parity, etc. So we know now what happened. And I think that it would be wrong to assess the past by knowing for sure what happened, right? So just trying to, meet the ends. So this is absolutely, in my opinion, irrelevant. In terms of reforms, and whether they were, partial, or well thought, etc. Igor Gaidar left quite substantial academic heritage. There are books, 4 or 5 books, such thick, 1,500 page each, right? So you can find a lot of his thinking, how he decided what should be done in terms of reforming Russia. So he said that we have to privatize as fast as possible to reach a point of no return to communism. That's why this privatization was very rapid. Of course, it was partial, but nevertheless, within 4 or 5 years, Russian economy, by IMF standards, became a market economy. Was it became market economy in real sense? Of course not, because the group of those who own the property is very small. And there is a clear correlation between ownership rights, law, political participation, and real democracy, right? And when we're talking about collapse of reforms, we should see those links, right? And we should see those relationships. About shock economy. So what happened in March of 1992? Of course, I'm giving you my understanding of the situation, since indeed this presentation was very provocative, right? So I was sitting, I was thinking that, okay, I can just listen. We'll see what's going to happen, but then I decided I should intervene. By March of 1992, President Yeltsin and Gaidar lost all support from people because those reforms were so radical, and Supreme Soviet protested against all reforms, both economic and political ones. So there was a question whether we should still apply for IMF membership or World Bank membership. So, and this divide between the Supreme Soviet, at that time the highest authority in Russia, and presidential office became evident, right? That's why partial reforms later on, from March 1992, not before that. From March, because Supreme Soviet was doing its best to block all radical reforms. Because in the end of the day, before the constitution was adopted in December of 1993, it was up to Supreme Soviet to decide which laws should be made and implemented. As for literature and research, so I do not want to take a lot of your time. If you want, so you can later come to my office and we'll discuss with students of fine arts or for those issues. But you can look at Joseph Stiglitz, his famous book Globalization and Its Discontents, in chapter 5, with question, who lost Russia, with question mark, right? Chapter 5, wholly devoted to design and implementation of Russian reforms. Who planned those reforms, how they were implemented, and what outcomes, what lessons we can learn from those reforms. Jeffrey Sachs, the guy who at that time worked at Harvard University and he was one of fathers of economic reforms. He also wrote a couple of pieces in leading American economic journals about reforms. Yoshika Herrera, who used to work at Harvard, she wrote about the sequence of journeying Russia to various international institutions. So you can ask the question, why Russia was rejected from a place in WTO for so long? Why, the West decided to invite Russia first to IMF and World Bank rather than to WTO? If you want to stimulate trade, which is a major form of international economic relationship, right? You should think first how to integrate Russia in global trade. That Russia became a member only in 2012, right? So just 2.5 years ago. So a long period of negotiations. And Celeste Wallander, yet another authority, he used to work at Harvard, and she worked in a think tank in Washington DC, and now she's in the MIT. Again, she testified before Congress several times of Russian reforms, Russian foreign policy. You can get an overview of those processes, based upon those things. And finally, Chinese economy and what Putin is doing today. Again, yet another lesson. Being failed with liberal reforms, so-called liberal reforms in the 90s, Putin and his team in the early 21st century looked at China, Chinese economic miracle. And he took China as a role model, right? So, it works. It works. We still see, quite substantial growth in mostly centrally planned economy. Of course, there are some segments which are run by private companies, but by and large, all economy in China is controlled by the state. It works. So I wouldn't say that, it's either or, right? Of course, what you said is quite provocative, but again, the picture, in my opinion, is a little bit more complicated. Thank you.
Thank you. Pavel, if you have
maybe about China economy, and is it a good example of social, centrally planned economy? If you analyze the history of China and compare the period before reforms in 1978 and after, you will understand that the free market, or more free market after this reform, gets a new economy in the China. But before reforms, they have many problems, and this is very low level of GDP. I think the real sources of economic growth in China is the liberalization of economy in this period of Deng Xiaoping. Okay.
I saw Rebecca raising her hand, and if there is other questions, I'll be watching for your hand. But you don't have. What? Okay, so you decided not to ask a question. Okay, any other questions or comments?
One quick question, maybe can you pick this up?
I don't.
The forms, are they over or still going on?
What?
The reforms.
Forms?
Yeah.
I think it's not complete, of course. Reforms not complete. In Russia, you mean?
Yeah.
Of course not.
And then, what if the shock therapy? Would you say it was too long? Would have been maybe a better idea to make it shorter. It's to get perfect picture of this.
This picture, in the beginning, yes?
Yeah. So you see where it goes down to
This.
Yeah. So the shock therapy in time is shorter. And the way
Shorter.
it goes further down would have been, in your opinion, would have been more successful.
If we more shock therapy,
Yeah.
I think if we have had consistent reform, we will success. But real way is different. I think so.
I did my best to make a point that it was impossible, more radical reforms, because the first set, or the first liberalization, 100% liberalization of prices, which took place in the beginning of January 1992, it really shocked the whole society. And in March, there was a session, a spring session of Russian parliament, Soviet-style parliament, which was dominated by communists, and they said no to reform. So actually, the country could not be ruled by presidential decrees because it was a parliamentary republic. And before 1993, no chance for a more shocking way for reform. So there were political hurdles. So when you look at Russia like a banana republic, it's one thing, but you should understand there were institutions, good or bad, there were institutions. There was a huge resistance. Yeltsin was impeached, he was not impeached, but there were several attempts to impeach him for this shock therapy. And Gaigar had to resign from his position as acting prime minister because of those shock reforms, and he was replaced by Viktor Chernomyrdin, the guy who came from Ministry of Energy from Gazprom, right? Before that, he served in Gazprom. So it's not as easy. So those graphs cannot give you the truth. You should look at other variables. Because, Gaidar did not have free hands in designing and implementing in the phase of implementation of reforms. It was much more difficult, much more complicated. So when we talk about whether reforms are over or not, just look. I think that during crisis, during period of sanctions, of course, the government should do something, and you should look at external pressure and some other drivers and triggers for reform. So the key question is why countries are willing to reform, right? Why to reform? Well, and maybe Pavel will tell us. So, and this is a key question. First, if you can explain why countries reform, who are those who has to reform, then you will see whether those reforms are over or not, right? Otherwise, it's absolutely senseless discussion.
Maybe I will tell you about this position. I'm not agree that we can't do more logical reforms, and that the real action, you can see this real action was a radical, liberal, and we can't do more radical reform. I think it's not a good idea to ban export of X. I don't think that a good idea it's regulation of prices of this type of goods, and I think that is that was mistake. It was not liberal. In this day, in 2015, we need to formulate our lesson. It's not the problem of Gaidars or something another. It's a problem of our understanding of the past. I think we had many mistakes in the reforms, and inconsistency of these reforms is a fact. I don't think that the real action in this picture, is a good idea. It's more radical if you don't nationalization of railway sleepers. I think it's possible. It's possible. Do not nationalization of railway sleepers. I think it will be better. Questions? Questions?
Yeah, okay.
So can you just flip back to the last slide for a second? That sounds good. The previous slide?
Previous? This?
No, the one with the regulation prices.
Prices.
Yeah.
This.
So you said it would have been more radical and it would have been better if all the prices had been liberalised. And I understand that from a pure Hayekian point of view that might be absolutely true. But I also don't know whether Hayek was overly concerned with inequality and the amount of suffering that people would have to go through. And it seems to me that regulating those prices was a way to make sure that they were affordable. And you said that free markets mean there aren't shortages, but I would argue that free markets don't mean there aren't shortages, it just means that the limiting factor is no longer the amount of the good, it's the price of the good, because it's prohibitive to buy the thing. And I don't think it should be prohibitive to buy bread or local baby food.
What is the question?
So you said it would have been better.
Better if we don't prohibition.
Yeah.
Better for the different people, not only for the rich, but for the poor man too. Because.
But if you deregulate prices, then presumably the prices rise because there isn't suddenly an abundance of these goods. So what does that mean? That means that
You ask about increasing. You're asking about inflation as a result of free prices, and. Okay, is it a problem for the poor man? I think.
yeah.
If you're a poor man, you can change. You can change situation. What is the better to have expensive foods, or you don't have a food? If you have regulation, you don't have a foot on these markets. If you have prohibition, if you have a ban to the free prices, I think it's not a good idea to regulate a part of the prices in free market. In the one field, we don't have a problem in the free part of economy, but in another part we will have a problem, and we can do better if we ban these prices.
Okay, you had a comment?
No, actually, it's maybe in Russian. I will explain Pavel, how it worked, because the problem was that Russia switched on world prices on oil in late 80s, right? And Russia was able to buy bread, milk, alcohol, which was not produced locally, right? And in order to avoid or minimize the chances for social and political unrest, the government established the fixed prices on these essential products. So it was absolutely needed at that period of time. And it was a law, right? Again, so you cannot just divide or just, anti-politics from economics. And you should also understand that, I don't know how young you were in 1992, but we those who had savings, we lost everything. We did not have any kopeck left in the savings bank, right? So we just relied upon our salary, our wage, which was, as you said, as you indicated in the next slides, inflated, right? So it was very limited amount of money to buy something, right? So people actually applauded this decision that finally we see a state intervention, right? And the state intervention was a prerequisite for relative normalization of the situation. So I understand that high incentives for markets, invisible hands of the market, etc., etc. But I can tell you that there is no any single country, maybe except for Iceland, where the state does not intervene into the economy, right? So actually, we should not have illusions. So there are many, many interventions by the state in the economy, especially in the period of transition. It was a case of Poland, it was a case of Hungary, it was a case of Czech Republic and many other states. So it's I would say it's oversimplification to speak Russia in terms of free markets and shock therapy. So first, Russia is not homogeneous. So you can find regions rich in those resources or bread. So it's one case is Kuban, for instance. They have apples, they have vegetables, they have basics. Right? Or you can go to Norilsk, they have nothing. They have platinum, but platinum should be delivered to markets, world markets, right? By planes or with the use of nuclear icebreakers. Who will pay for this? The state should intervene, right? And the intervention of state into Russian economy is a prerequisite. Look at the map. Russia is not homogeneous in terms of geography and economic development. So without intervention, you will not have a common economic space. So it's just ABC, right, in political economy. That's why I would say that all those things which we are discussing are quite provocative for our thinking, and I'm very thankful to Pavel for his presentation, because he's intrigued me in many ways, and he made me refresh my memory about the past. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll have just a short comment to what Dr. Lomagin said about 1992 and not being still there and experiencing that. I thought of an example that is happening right now. Situation is different, but about regulation of prices being expected or welcome and quite popular. Just within the next 1 or 2 years ago, it has been quite often discussed in Russian media and society whether there should be any kind of state intervention controlling the rise of exactly food prices, given this current situation of the exchange rates falling and probably some of the big shops and trading chains using this chance of rising the prices for essential goods. And from my experience, I don't have any research data. Again, that would be something that would be very welcome and expected by the population who didn't change their 20,000 ruble salary despite all the changes in economics. And they would expect that things that they usually buy don't get 2 or 3 times more expensive just because it's explained by the exchange rate changes. So just trying to link it to a more fresh example of how they could have felt in 1992, but maybe more tougher back then than now. Thanks. And once again, Pavel, thank you very much for the presentation.
Can I say a few words in the end? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'll give you the last word.
Okay.
And,
Thanks.
So thank you in advance.
Okay. Thank you, Georg. I just want to tell about intervention in other countries. If you compare our government and maybe Scandinavian countries, you will agree that the government is very active in every country, but if you compare different periods, your picture is different. If you compare 70s and 90s in England, I mean reforms of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan in the United States, you know that the source of economic growth in 19th was in these reforms. And without free market reforms, you can't get wealth. And intervention creates problems not only in Russia, but if you calculate the cost of the government, it's very high level of government spending in economy. I think you should agree that we need to decrease this level, and I'm sure that the future reform is the reform of the decreasing this level of government in economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.